right now. But if you guys would be willing to, I think if you piss around with the settings for a bit, you should be able to just put me on the screen. If you're on a mobile, it should automatically happen because I'm speaking and I've muted all you guys. But I'm going to start sharing my screen and get into this presentation. Mr. Dalton, I will mute you as well. There we go. Everyone's muted. Good stuff. If you have any questions at all, just stick them in the chat throughout this and then we'll go from there. So let's get on with this as I figure out how to do this. Sorry, proper technophobe here. I need to figure out how to share my screen. It's so easy when I set this up. Okay, what I'll do is I'll just talk you guys through it because that'll be much easier. So, firstly, thank you for coming on this call. That means a lot to me. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And if you have any feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. And as you're kind of aware, I want to talk about consistency today and why it's such an important thing for you guys. And like, I don't know what any of your backgrounds are, but if you're in the CrossFit world or just the training world in general, it's so important because it basically, consistency builds on long-term success or builds towards long-term success. And we know that is the key. Like if we go short, sharp, intense, it works for a bit and then you always fall off the wagon. I've never seen anyone sustain that kind of stuff where they've gone all in, or I've probably got 1% of people who go all in and then keep it there. The key is to find some sort of long-term success, some small deliberate steps that you can take every day that are going to build towards your aim to do, because it builds on some momentum. Like momentum is the key. If we can consistently take small steps forwards, we get there, and momentum builds momentum. Then suddenly the positivity builds, and we start taking bigger step forwards. And we start off with small steps. That phrase about a journey of 1,000 miles starts in a single step is so true. And whether your goal is to perform at the CrossFit Games or whether your goal is to just live a happier, healthier life, this like consistency is the key. Because if you're at the top end, like you're never going to sprint all that time and keep that intensity. And if you're at the beginning of your journey as well, you're just going to get overwhelmed if you go behind. And the other side of this, it's just so much easier. Like honestly, fuck going like all that intensity the whole time. It's hard work. Sorry, I've just got someone coming on board who's trying to get the password. There we go. Sweet. So yeah, consistency is important for those three reasons. Basically, it builds momentum. Small steps build towards long-term success, and also it's just a lot fucking easier. So I have a pyramid right in front of me that basically says at the bottom, self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the foundation of what we do. It sounds very esoteric and very kind of ephemeral and vague and not really kind of precise and scientific, but we have to know who you are. We have to know your drivers. We have to know who you want to be at the fundamental level. You've got to understand your previous pitfalls, your previous successes, anything that you particularly like. So if it's nutrition, for example, what have you previously done that works? Have you fasted? Have you done intermittent fasting? Did that work for you? Okay, so there's something to build on. What haven't you done that worked? Did you try and count your macros every single day? For some people, that's great. For other people, it's not great. So knowing yourself and knowing what you want out of it is hugely important. And it's got to work around your life as well. So like people see these plans on the internet the whole time. They're like, yep, I'm going to buy this $97 plan. And from that, I'm just going to do exactly what it says on here. But the problem is it doesn't build towards you. Because there can be all the studies in the world, but if it doesn't work for you, then it means pretty much fuck all. And something I would be going through in the seminars with the guys, but something I want to kind of drop into here is the idea of 4 mindset models. Okay. And this is something I would spend literally 40 minutes maybe going over. So try and brush across it in this short time is very difficult. However, you're going to start to get an appreciation for where you fit in these models, and there's no right or wrong in this, and it's all a continuum. There's no like you are in this category and you're stuck in this category. It's like right now you seem to be thinking thoughts that align with this, but there's steps out of it and a step towards what is eventually the champ's mindset. The champ's mindset for me is someone who has extreme self-knowledge. So they know themselves perfectly. They're constantly looking for further self-knowledge. On top of that, they have perspective. They see the situation clearly for what it is. There's no bias on the situation. They're not seeing it with their own personal bias lens. Like a bias lens is something that, like, just the same way as you can hold up a piece of glass to the sunlight and you can control its focus. It's exactly the same thing. So it filters exactly onto what you want to see. So we've got to have self-knowledge. And that's the champs model there. On top of that, they have fun. So that's the end goal. So they have perspective, they have self-knowledge, and they want to have fun. There's 3 other mindset models that are further away from that. To begin with is the checked mindset model. The checked, like in terms of chess, like checkmate. It's someone who feels trapped. They feel in a dark place. They feel lost, like they can't get out of the situation they're in. They feel stuck. They're generally very kind of just dark and down, and they believe that success is for someone else and not for them. And they're very good at intellectualizing a problem, but rarely can they like internalize the problem. So they can see the solution. Like people who I coach who are in this, they will see the situation very kind of clearly, but they'll put their bias on it that they can't get out of it, and they'll learn everything and they'll intellectualize it. So they'll be able to almost like coach me as well as I can coach them in the first place. It's just weird, but they never take action on it. The next one is what should we go for? We'll go for the chaser model. The chaser model is someone whose life is a roller coaster. Like 1 minute they're on top of the world, they're just crushing it. They're loving what they're doing. They are like kind of very analytical when they're at the top of this roller coaster. And then the next minute, whether it's like 2 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 months, 2 years later, they're at the bottom of this rut, probably 2 months later. They're at the bottom of this rut and they just can't see the way out. And it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like really overwhelmed, looking at the situation. Like I just like can't get out of this situation. That's also like a big one, especially if you've been training for a bit or you've been going through a journey for a bit of time. So you maybe 1 to 2 years, something like that, or actually about 3 to 2 years. Generally, people are in that model, but it depends on you. It depends on like knowledge from other sides. And then you have the chaser model. The chaser model is someone who wants to be at the next stage now. Like there's no fucking about that. They just want to be there. They just want to like go. But they're so engaged in forward motion that they often neglect the hard work. So they're like, this is like the puppy dog model. They're all excited about going forwards. They see like all this potential. They can see it in front of them. They see it unfolding, but they don't know the next step. So they feel overwhelmed or like too excited to take the next step. So they can see the end goal clearly, but putting it together is tough. So that was supposed to be brief. And I suppose it was brief. I could go into that more, but already if you look at your training in particular or your health in particular, like generally people vary a bit from health, wealth, love and happiness, those 4 kind of cornerstones of life. They'll vary quite a lot. So in like health, for example, like let's use my example because it's completely honest. For a long time, my health was like, I was that champ mindset model. I had perspective. I saw the situation clearly. I had good self-knowledge about my training. I knew when I got injured. I knew when I like had to eat more. I saw the situation perfectly. I was having fun in my training, but my business was shit. So my wealth and my relationships were awful. And it's exactly the same character traits needed to get them to stop that. So the foundation of changing and keeping consistency is self-knowledge. The next one is direction. And this is like, we basically, in order to get from one point in the map to another point in the map, not only have to know where you want to go, but where you are right now as well. Because obviously you can't plan a route without your current location. So we've got the current location with self-knowledge. We know like what type of person we are. And by the way, if you make a kind of note about which one of those models, those checked, changer, chaser and champ model you think you are in regards to training, that would be super useful for a bit. So who do you want to be? Like this is the key. The direction is not what you want to achieve, because we are emotionally driven people. Like human beings are emotional. No matter where you are on the spectrum, there's emotion. There's like, you're not data driven. You're someone that wants to feel a certain way. That's why I think we do things, because we want to feel, we want to like get this emotion. And whether it's an evolutionary thing or a conditioned thing or a society type thing, we want to become this new thing, and we want to feel this way. So it's not a what. We don't want to like lose X percentage of body fat. We don't want to put on like 20 kilos onto our back squat, or we don't want to like hit a frown time. We want to feel a certain way. We want to feel the way that gives us. So everyone's read like Start With Why, and this is kind of down the right, or a lot of people have read Start With Why, and this was hugely popular because it got people thinking more deeply. However, it doesn't go deep enough, in my opinion. I think you've got to get all the way down to who you are fundamentally as a human being. And this takes time. It's not something you can just like sit down with a pen and a piece of paper and just write it out and do it, because it takes time. It's a very, very tough thing to do, and it does take time to gain self-knowledge. But what we're kind of doing is figuring out who you want to be. And let's think long-term as well, because no matter how many people will sell, like, especially in the fitness industry, will sell you into a 12-week or 8-week package. Like, does that really mean a lot to you? Does the next 8 weeks mean a lot to you? Or does the next 2 or 3 years mean a lot to you? And I'm sure you will agree with me that in 2-3 years time, like, you have a much greater chance of achieving great things than in 8 weeks time. Because as human beings, we massively overestimate what we can achieve in 8 weeks, but hugely underestimate what we can achieve in 2 to 3 years. Okay, so that's something. So who do you want to be in 2 to 3 years time? Like, this is something I go through with all my clients. But spend time digging into that. Like, this, you should be able to see here, is my notepad that I record everything in. I take it everywhere with me, and I jot down things the whole time. I'm obviously so ingrained into this world, but something like that, just like notes on your phone or something like that, that would massively help. Just figure out who you want to be, and it takes time, and you need to consistently remind yourself of this. The next step is to become obsessed with the process. So the third tier, we've gone self-knowledge, direction, and the third step is process. So become obsessed with the process. You've got to first develop a very simple process, because I think there's that Michelangelo quote, or Leonardo da Vinci, I think, about simplicity being the ultimate sophistication. The more simple we can make this, the better. And we're looking for those simple changes, because if we're trying to be consistent and we add so much complexity in there straight away, then shit becomes very difficult. And I want to kind of bring something called the chef, cook, baker analogy in. If you think about a baker, they're someone who needs very precise details. It's like 13.5 grams of yeast. I'm a shit baker, by the way. Let's get this out of the way. It's like 13.5 grams of yeast, like 210 grams of flour. It's all very precise. It's delicate. It's small movement. It's kind of like, how precise can I be? How on it can I be? How much can I like hit exactly this and tweak a tiny bit? And like, it's very fine. If you look at a cook, however, they're like Jamie Oliver's probably a good example of this. Like, it'll be like a splash of wine, a drizzle of olive oil. Like, I need some this flavor to go with that flavor, but it's not specific. It's not like I need exactly this. They've both got their benefits and they've both got the positives. And this comes back to the self-knowledge thing, which I'll explain in a second. And the last step is, or the last one of those where we kind of want to get to, is the chef analogy. The chef is someone who understands both sides of that. They appreciate the guidelines because they're the overarching principles of our training or our nutrition or our mobility. But they also understand that to make something perfect, we need to focus on that small detail as well. So how does this relate to your training and who you are? So remember, I asked you to think about whether you're in the chaser, the changer, or the champ mindset model. And where you are in that, it basically correlates to which one of these cook, baker, chef analogies that you should use. If you're right at the beginning of your journey and you are like, at this point, you're typically in the checked mindset model. So you're feeling like you're a bit lost. At this point, very specific, very small actions towards the future are going to be helpful. So The key is small. What's the smallest thing I can do and get away with it? So when I wanted to start meditating, I had no knowledge of meditation. Actually, let's use mobility because that's a better example. When I wanted to like fix my injuries, I had no knowledge of mobility or anything like that. Well, very little. And the key here was to give myself a very precise stretch to do once a day for just 20 seconds. Because if I don't have 20 seconds, I haven't got life, right? So I needed to see that situation. I needed to kind of look at it and have a very precise thing, something that I could mark and measure and check. And if that's in nutrition, for example, it could be, okay, today I'm going to drink 4 pints of water today. Okay, that's my thing. And it's a very specific thing. If we like, what we can do is if we hit that, great. If not, then we can come back to it next week, or we can do something else, or we can build onto it. So very small, very specific, measurable goals. And you will kind of understand this as I'm going through it, what is right for you. So simplicity for the first one, and that baker analogy for somebody's in the checked mindset model. Somebody's in the changer mindset model. Like, so 1 minute it's up, 1 minute it's down. Like here we need a more general guideline. Okay, so we need to look at things and go, okay, these are the principles that I want you to follow the whole time, because it gives you slack in the system. For sometimes you want to be like a baker, sometimes you want to be even more like a chef, and you want to kind of try and tweak. And when you're at the top of the peak, you're super analytical. So you want to like get in there and kind of think about exactly what you want to do. But there's other times, you know, I'm feeling shit. I'm feeling like pretty low about my training. I just need some general principles. So something like eat protein with every meal is super helpful. Or something along the lines of, I will strength train twice per week. Something like that. It's going to keep you more consistent. And then the last thing, we actually revert back to the baker, and we start trying to, as we get into that chaser mentality where we want to be there next, we want to be at the next level, we want to go. We need precision, not because it's going to keep us on track, or not because it's going to get us moving, but because it's going to stop us or prevent us from doing the shit that we don't want to do, or it's going to make us do the shit that, or make us do the stuff that we naturally avoid. So that's the kind of, those are the correlatory factors there. So are you a chef? Are you a cook? Are you a baker? So we'll go through that. Obviously, we want to get to the champ/chef model ASAP. But there's ways out of that. And it all starts with consistency. And this applies to mindset, training, nutrition, mobility, whatever kind of side of training you're looking at improving right now. The next idea, I know I'm rushing through this, but I want to get through your questions, and I realized that I've only got 10 minutes and I've got a call straight after you guys. The next slide's like that I really want. It's a shame that you guys can't see this, but it's called the competence spectrum. If anyone wants a copy of it afterwards, I'll send it over to you, and I'll send you the recording as well. But the competence spectrum is basically over here. On one side, you have incompetence, so you're not doing the correct, you're not like performing behavior you need to do in order to get to where you want to be. On the other side is competence, where you are. Okay, and some people think it's like a binary thing, so you either aren't or you are, but there's stages in between. So imagine I'm driving along, and suddenly someone cuts me up. I'm going to go through it super quickly, but somebody cuts me up. I slam the horn, go like swear at him, get angry. At that point, I'm going through what's called unconscious incompetence. So I'm unconsciously kind of like losing what I should be doing. I'm unconsciously doing the wrong thing. Like we can all pretty much agree that shouting at someone through a car is probably the wrong thing to do. The next stage is what's going to be called conscious incompetence, where you realize that you're doing something wrong, but you can't quite change it. So someone cuts me up, I'm so fucking angry. I just want to slam my hand on the horn and just like get so angry. But there's something in the back of my mind that says, hang on, wait a minute. Like, don't do that. But I do it fucking anyway, because that's the kind of, like, I've ingrained that belief. So right here is something called high consciousness and high resistance. So the amount of resistance I'm getting is so high, but it's still building to stage 3, which is conscious competence. This is obviously where you have to start really thinking about what you're doing, and you have to make the right decision. It's really tough. Okay. So conscious competence. So someone cuts me up. Like it takes every ounce of self-restraint, but I don't slam my hand on the horn and I don't get angry. But it takes every ounce. And this is where people fuck up, because it's the highest amount of resistance and it's the highest amount of consciousness that's required to prevent the negative behavior. But they think because it's so hard that, you know what, I'm miles away anyway, I'm just not going to do it, and I barely do it anyway. But they're in fact at the next point, they're coming towards what's called unconscious competence. So they're getting towards the point from now on, like every step from now on, from the highest point of resistance, every time we repeat the beneficial action, now we're starting to ingrain that good behavior, and it becomes easier and easier and easier and easier. And that's where most people give up with the consistency thing. So knowing next time that you get to that point of really high resistance, that really high consciousness, then we know that it's going to get easier from now on. And you're probably, the harder the resistance gets, the easier it's going to be in the long term. So the closer we are. And then the last kind of bit of this is called the prerequisites of change. The first one is acceptance. So there are 4 A's of change. The first one is acceptance. Accept the situation for where you are. See it clearly, like perspective. Just see it for what it clearly is. There's no bias in there. You're simply a human being doing human things. Let's change it. Like you're not stuck there. You never were. You never will be. Next bit is awareness. So you've got to cultivate awareness and presence. This is very hard, people, because we go through our lives, especially in training, especially when we've been training for a while, switched off. We just go through the motions. Like, I'm sure you've all driven a car or walked somewhere, and you don't know how, but you got there somehow. You look around like, oh shit, how did I do this? I've driven for half an hour and I'm how many miles down the road, and I did this journey the whole time. Because we do the same thing over and over again, it's an evolutionary strategy just to allow us to think about other stuff. So we've got to cultivate awareness about what we're doing, and whether you do this through a whole myriad of methods, whether it's meditation or mindfulness, or whether it's just simply thinking about it more, or having something to remind you, like an alarm on your phone or something like that. Cultivating that awareness is super helpful. Last piece is the second to last piece of the prerequisites of change is accountability. We have to have someone hold us accountable, because as humans, we are shit at holding ourselves accountable. I'm sorry, but we are. It's just what happens. We are desperate to kind of take the easy route or the path of least resistance. So having someone else to do this is great. My favorite example is this is this guy who, with him and his friends, they're in the States, and they're all Jewish guys, and they make this bet that is important. I'm not just bringing that up for any particular reason. They make this bet who can lose most weight. Some of you might have heard this. And it's like, I want to lose X number of pounds. Whoever hits that weight first, they win. However, if you don't, the last person to do it, they had to pay, I think it was $150 to the American Nazi Society or the KKK or something like that. So yeah, pretty ridiculous, but that kind of accountability, someone holding you accountable, someone looking at the situation who isn't you, it really, really helps. As humans, we're motivated by the carrot and the stick, and use both. And the last one is adaptation. Just understand that it's a process. Like their competence spectrum, just understand it's a process. And that's kind of, I know I've rushed through this, guys. I'm going to bring it back onto you guys so I can see you all. But if you have any questions or anything that you're really struggling with, because we've got 5 minutes left, I want you to stick those in the messages, and whether it's nutrition or training or mindset or whatever. If you've got something that you're struggling to be consistent with, please stick it in the comments now, and I'll kind of attack that. If not, I'll just go through the nutrition example, but I'm going to give you a minute to kind of to type something out maybe and see what happens. Or I can just go for the nutrition example. So nutrition is something that people struggle with a lot. It's so emotional that we struggle to break that. That attachment to it. But we're just going to start at that pyramid. So self-knowledge. When you think about nutrition, what has previously worked? What are you driven by? Like let's focus on that. Obviously, it's an imaginary situation, but what are we driven by in this situation? Like, that's the first thing. You know this better than I do. I can't do this bit for you. So the next thing is to do direction. Where do you want to be? 2-3 years time. Let's look at nutrition. Let's use the classic. Let's use a CrossFit example. Actually, I want to be performing at a regionals level standard. High ambitions, but you know what? It could happen. So in order to do this, I need to, like, my prerequisites are a high carbohydrate tolerance. This is getting super geeky, but like a high carbohydrate tolerance, and adequate protein, adequate hydration. And then we can build out the methods. We're going to start super simple by just saying, okay, I'm going to increase my carbohydrate by like 20 grams per week. I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know whether that's a good strategy or not. But you can see the thinking here. I started very simply. So that much could be like one portion of rice throughout the week. I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to bump it up. I'm going to bump it up and see how much I can tolerate. Then I'm going to, that's divulging the process as well. That's securing the process. And then last stage is a daily commitment to this. So let's look at this from a daily point of view. Every day I'm going to remind myself of where I'm going. I'm going to remind myself of that 2-3 vision, like who I want to be in 2-3 years time. I'm going to remind myself of the process. So what's the process over the next 2-3 years looking like? And then finally, I'm going to make a commitment for today. So I'm going to plan out my goals. Like, what am I going to do today? And I'm just going to go bam, 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 bam. And then it's simply a matter of executing. But if we remind ourselves at the beginning of the day where we're going, why we're doing what we're doing, and who we're on our way to becoming, then it's easier. And that, guys, because I have 2 minutes until the next guys get on this call, is it. Just want to say a massive thank you for all of you to help me practice. And also, hopefully I helped you guys out. But if you have any kind of feedback for me, I'd love to hear it. Although, if you want to say, I don't do sales pitches, that's not what I do. But if you want to say thank you, if you want to kind of a way of kind of spreading the word, if you enjoyed it, just I'd really appreciate a shout out on social media, and that would help me massively. However, I shall speak to you glorious people soon. And if you have any